Good evening, everyone. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Montclair Planning Board. Notice of this meeting is published in the local papers in accordance with New Jersey statute, also posted in the lobby of this building. We are being streamed live on montclair.peg.tv and broadcast live on Channel 34. This meeting is a quasi-judicial proceeding, meaning that we have powers and procedures resembling a court of law, and we are obligated to objectively determine facts and draw conclusions from them in order to provide a basis for an official action. Any questions or comments must be limited to the issues of what the board may legally consider in reaching a decision, and decorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. Please be advised that this evening's applications, if there is attorney representation, attorneys will present an overview. Members of the public will have the opportunity to examine the witnesses presented by the applicant, and the board will cue them in as to the appropriate time for those examinations. If at the end of the application anyone from the public wishes to make a statement with respect to the application, they will be given the opportunity to do so at that time. I'm not going to take you through all of the details, since this is not going to be, I'm not anticipating it to be a full-blown controversial hearing. You know, we've got 5 people here, so I'll save you the rest of the spiel. But we'll move on to our roll call.
Chair Wynn.
Here.
Vice Chair Brodock.
Here.
Mr. Schwartz.
Here.
Councilor Schlager is excused. Ms. Willis. Here. Mr. Rooney is excused. Mr. Ian Wally.
Here.
Ms. Lockman is excused. Mr. Barr.
Here.
Mr. Gilmer.
Here.
Okay.
All right. Next on the agenda are our minutes from September 17th.
I've received comments on the September 17th minutes from Mr. Brodock. Are there any additional changes?
I want to amend something that I think I may have inadvertently put in the minutes, that the applicant needs to repaint the facade.
Repaint the facade?
Correct, repaint the facade, which is not accurate. Oh, this is for 510 Valley Road.
That's the resolution, though.
Wasn't that also part of this meeting?
In the minutes.
In the minutes or so.
I just want to make sure if I did make that edit, that I was incorrect.
I know you made the edit to the resolution. I don't see that edit in the minutes.
Okay, if it's not there, then great.
Yeah, so the minutes are good. That's not in the
Okay.
minutes.
Then
So motion to approve the minutes as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay,
I'm abstaining also.
right. Okay,
'Cause I wasn't here.
so the next item is the resolution for 510 Valley Road, and I think, Keith, that's where you made item number 7,
Yes.
where you want them to repaint the facade.
Yes, and I think we might have an
Yes.
entire statement to put in there.
So after I got Keith's proposed changes to the resolution, I had occasion to discuss it with the applicant's attorney, and their understanding about their architect's testimony suggested that they did not agree to repaint the wall, the facade wall. What they did agree to is to paint the retaining wall rather than the facade. The facade wall is in relatively decent shape on the south side of the building.
I thought that there was, the top portion of that facade was supposed to be cleaned up or painted.
So
That's what I recall. I recall that there being testimony, and I didn't even, check your resolution. But
that was
just,
my
it was really just that top
recollection.
portion so that it would match the front portion.
And they intend to do that. That was, I think I agree with you, because I recall that.
So it's not
So-
the whole facade?
It is not the whole facade. So what they have proposed, the following language has been proposed by the applicant in lieu of the Section 7 that's there now. And they're proposing, the applicant shall paint the south-facing side of the entire retaining wall along the south side of the property from the rear of the building to the Valley Road sidewalk, and shall clean or paint as necessary the south-facing portion of the existing building canopy at the upper southeast corner of the building.
Is it the fabric canopy you're talking about?
They're going to, yes, they agreed to that, because the canopy wraps around. And
Right.
so they've agreed to clean it to the extent necessary.
I don't recall the canopy wrapping around.
That's what he said. I didn't look at the plan, honestly.
I think that's the new canopy wraps it around, right?
Yeah,
I assume that doesn't need to be
That's the whole
cleaned.
application.
No, but it's not it's not a fabric canopy, it's the
It's
architectural treatment.
Right.
Okay.
As I recall, was going to wrap it, and they were going to clean the side on the south sides to match the new part on the. That was just what I recall.
Yeah. I think we're on the same page. I'm not quite sure.
As long as canopy, it doesn't say fabric canopy, we could say it's an architectural canopy.
There is a fabric canopy in front.
I know, and they're putting in a new canopy.
But I assume that would not need to be cleaned since
Yeah,
it's brand new.
You're not going to clean the new canopy.
Why would they? Right.
Maybe if we could just say, clarify that it means it's not a
The
canopy.
architectural,
Treatment? So that,
Overhang.
is it an overhang? It's that's that top portion. I don't know what the term is for that.
Overhang.
Let's say it's almost like an overhang. I mean, it's got lighting underneath it, right?
Yeah,
If you don't want to call it a canopy, you can call it an overhang.
okay.
so we'll take that word out. At the upper southeast corner of the
There's nothing
building,
else
so
in this
clearly
description.
there's a agreement to where this is going
Right.
to be.
Okay.
Maybe the entrance overhang.
That's
Because
not
otherwise
clear.
an overhang could be somewhere else.
But it's on the south side of the building. That's where.
That's where it is.
That's what I have to make
Southeast
sure.
corner of the building.
Okay.
By story? First floor overhang or something?
Well, it's on the second. It's on the upper level.
Yeah.
That gets complicated because it's the first floor on the.
Street overhang? Street covering overhang?
Street, it doesn't cover a street.
No, it's along Alvin Place, the
Yeah.
private.
It's on the,
private
it's on
road?
the property, but not on Alvin Place.
Okay.
I think that gives us enough leverage, to inspect it,
Sure.
to hold them to it before we give them approvals, final approvals.
As long as you're comfortable with that language, and as
Yeah.
long as it, incorporates what it is that,
Okay.
okay, so that's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. I can live with that.
okay.
Do they present the easements they have to provide access to the building?
They have not.
They did indicate in this that they would.
And that's a condition of the resolution
Yeah.
as well.
Right.
What is it with?
Yeah.
With that,
Okay.
I'd move to accept the resolution with the amendments we've made tonight and the ones I proposed before, such that the ones tonight
Is there a second?
are overriding.
Second by Mr. Gilmer. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Opposed?
I'm opposed.
I'm not.
And
I'm abstaining, and Carol's
Yes.
abstaining.
okay. And our next item is the resolution to approve the subdivision application for Raymond Gray. Are there any changes to that resolution? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Before voting, this was at the same meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
It was the subdivision.
It was.
I guess not a
almost
subdivision,
It's a
it was
lot
a lot
line
line movement.
adjustment.
Yeah, okay,
Lot
lot line,
adjustment.
that's what threw me.
It's a
Okay.
lot line adjustment, yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? John and Carol.
All right, and that takes us to the application for 59 Glenridge Avenue. Good evening. You can have a seat. If you're more comfortable at the podium, you can do that too.
What I thought I would do, Mr. Chairman, if it's acceptable to you, is I would bring both the applicant and the
Just-
architect up. and-
Just one quick second. Is the green light on the microphone if you just hit the button at the bottom?
Sorry about that.
Perfect, thank you.
Good now. What I intended to do was call both the applicant and the architect up, have them both up here at the same time. In case the board had any questions, they could both be up here to answer if that's acceptable.
That's fine.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Michael Piramali of the law firm Gassion Pamaco, 524 Union Avenue in Belleville. I'm here tonight on behalf of applicant 59 Glenridge Ave LLC. The applicant is before the board tonight in connection with its proposed development and use of property located at 59-61 Glenridge Avenue, otherwise known as Block 4210, Lot 23 on the tax maps of the Township of Montclair. Subject property is currently developed with a one-story building operated as a Domino's Pizza restaurant. The applicant is here tonight seeking minor site plan approval in addition to variance relief in order to add 165 square foot storage room addition on the first floor to the rear of the building, and also to add a second floor with 2 residential one-bedroom apartment units above the existing building footprint. The subject property is located in the NC Neighborhood Commercial Zone, and the mixed use proposed here tonight is permitted in the zone. The property is also located in the Pine Street Historic District, and should this application be approved, it will bring the aesthetic of the property closer into conformity with the character of that district. As for the variances and exceptions being requested in connection with this application, specifically the applicant is requesting a variance from Montclair Code Section 347-95C, parens 1, to permit a front yard setback of 6.4 feet, where a setback of at least 20 feet is required. This is an existing condition. Variance from Montclair Code Section 347-95C, parens 2, to permit a side yard setback of 0.4 feet, where a setback of either 0 feet or at least 6 feet is required. Again, this is a pre-existing condition. A variance from Montclair Code Section 347-94 to permit an impervious coverage of 100%, where a maximum of 80% is permitted. This is also an existing condition. As part of our application here tonight, you'll hear that we have revised the plans to add some additional impervious, or rather pervious coverage, so that number will be reduced, but we're still going to request that variance just to be sure we do cover the correct number. A variance from Montclair Code Section 347-101 to permit a total of 5 parking spaces where 13 parking spaces are required. A variance from Montclair Code Section 347-104 to permit a parking setback of 0 feet from any property line where at least 4 feet is required. A variance from Montclair Code Section 347-103, which requires an off-street loading area where no off-street loading area is provided. That, again, is a pre-existing condition. 2 site plan exceptions. A site plan exception from Montclair Code Section 281-9B, requiring that parking spaces be a minimum size of 9 feet wide by 19 feet in length, where the proposed parking spaces here are 9 feet wide by 18 feet in length. And lastly, a site plan exception from Montclair Code Section 281-9D, requiring a driveway aisle width of 24 feet, where our driveway is only 8.9 feet wide. In support of this application, I intend to call 2 witnesses. First, Mohammed Kokar will testify as property owner and applicant regarding the current operation of the existing restaurant and the proposed development plan generally. Then our architect, Corolla Rosas, will testify regarding the proposed alterations to the building, the exterior of the property in detail, as well as the variance relief being requested. So without further delay, with your permission, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to call my first witness, Mr. Mohammed Kokar. Thank you. And again, I will bring them both up. I would like to also call our architect, Carola Rosas, to come up as well at the same time.
Why don't we swear them both in at the same time, and that way we can,
Cut right to the chase.
Yeah.
May I ask you both to raise your right hands, please? Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Since Mr. Kokar, you were the first witness, Mr. Piramali named, would you please state your full name
make sure your microphones are turned on also.
Yes, it's
Yeah, green lights.
and business affiliation for the record?
My name is Mohammed I. Kokar, and I'm the franchisee of Domino's Pizza, and I'm the owner of the building too.
So, Mr. Kokar, you own the applicant entity as well, 59 Glenridge Ave LLC, which also owns the property, that's correct?
Yes, sir.
And, ma'am, would you please state your full name and business affiliation for the record?
My name is Carol Rosas, and I'm a registered architect in State, New Jersey, and I'm located at 28 Cottage Place, Nutley, New Jersey.
We'll deal with it going forward.
All right,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
proceed.
Mr. Kokar, would you describe how the property is currently used?
Currently, we are using as a Domino's Pizza.
If you can speak up a little bit, of course.
Domino's.
We want to hear you. The microphone is
Okay.
probably picking up
pull that
great for the
microphone a little
broadcast.
closer to you as
But we
well.
want to hear you up here.
Okay.
Let's see. We're using the property for the Domino's Pizza only.
Would you describe the operation of the restaurant now?
This is only delivery and pickup, and the operation time is between in the morning from 11 a.m. to midnight, 12 p.m.
And those hours, is that 7 days a week, Mr. Kokar?
Yes.
It is. And do you have any seats? Is there any dine-in in your restaurant?
No.
There's none. Between the takeout and the delivery, would you say that one is more popular than the other, or are they both about the same of your business?
Delivery is more
Than
less-
takeout.
Takeout is less.
How many
60 by 40%.
Thank you. How many employees do you have working for you?
8.
And on any given shift, how are those employees allocated?
On the morning time, we are slow. It's like one worker inside and 1 drivers. In the night time, we have 3 people inside and sometimes 4, and 3 drivers.
Again, if you could just try to speak up, the board would appreciate
I will
it.
try my best.
If the present application before the board is improved, what improvements do you intend to make to the building generally?
This is one. This is the only building in that zone is only 1 floors, and it doesn't match with the others. We can improve. Look like to match with the other historical buildings and all those whatever is the requirements from the zoning board or the.
Okay, your voice is drifting off. So either bring the volume up or
Okay.
bring the microphone closer to you.
I'm just trying my best.
And
Okay.
and you don't have to be afraid of us.
No. It's all right. Thank you. This is first time.
So, Mr. Kokar, generally you intend to improve the property by adding a second story to bring it closer into the character of the neighborhood?
Yes.
Okay, that second story, what will be contained within that second story?
The second floor is only contains 2 apartments, 1 bedroom each.
Now, with regard to the addition that you proposed in the rear, would you describe that addition and what it'll be used for?
This is for extra storage because we don't have the basement, so that's the purpose. We need that storage room.
Now, with regard to that storage room that you need,
We
what do
need
you need to store in that room? What'll be stored there?
empty trays and empty trays and recycling stuff.
Would there be any paper products in there, cardboard and the like?
Yes, cardboard,
That type of thing?
papers,
There'll be
and
no grease, no oil,
No,
nothing of that
we
nature?
don't have that.
Nothing that would cause any
No, we
rodent
don't have
problem?
any.
How is the refuse from the restaurant currently removed from the property?
We have we have a dumpster. They use it twice a week.
Is there a private company that comes to pick it up?
Yes, it's a private company.
Okay. And what time of day do they come?
They come usually in the morning times between 6 and 8, 9 p.m. a.m.
And right now, again, that's 2 times a week, correct?
Yes.
Great. Now, how do they remove that dumpster? How does the truck access the site, and how does that dumpster get dumped and removed from the property?
The truck, they park on the sidewalk, and they move the they roll the dumpster to the sidewalk.
So they wheel the dumpster to the
Yes,
street, and then
right.
it gets put in the truck at that point.
It's not a big one, it's a small, it's like 3 by 5.
Now, should this application be approved, how will the refuse from both the residential and the restaurant uses be handled? Will it be the same, or will it change?
It's going to be same.
Now, do you recycle currently, and do you intend to continue to recycle?
Yes,
How is that accomplished?
that's town responsibility. I mean, we don't pick up those things. We move the recycling stuff to the sidewalk, and they pick it up.
So the township of Montclair handles the recycling for the
Yes.
site. With regard to the parking lot in the rear of the building, how is that parking lot currently utilized?
Currently, our drivers are using, if they need it sometime, usually they park on the street, but sometime if the street is busy, then they park on the side.
Again, if you would just try to keep your voice up. With regard to your takeout customers, do your takeout customers generally use the parking lot as well, or do they park in the front?
They park in on the front of the store.
And now, the parking in front of the store, is that generally available?
Yes, it's 50-minute parking over there, less than 15 or 2 hours.
Now, with regard to your employees, do your employees park in the lot behind your business?
No, they park on the street.
Okay. Is there any other public parking available to them nearby?
Yes, 1 block down on the other left-hand side.
There's a public parking lot?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if this application is approved, you're going to be adding 2 one-bedroom residential apartments. Will you assign any parking spaces in that rear lot for those residential units?
Yes, I think one parking in each unit.
You'll assign 1 space per unit?
Yes.
And will that be incorporated into the leases?
Yes.
Lastly, how are deliveries of supplies to the restaurant currently handled?
On front of the store, the sidewalk.
So it's on the street, it's
Yes.
on the street delivery?
Yes.
How many times a week do these deliveries occur?
Twice a week.
And what type of truck?
It's a big truck.
It's a big truck?
Yeah.
Does it block the driveway such that the driveway can't be
No.
used? And how long does it take to unload this truck?
35 or 40 minutes.
Great. And should this application be approved and the property developed in the way you intend, would that delivery schedule or method of delivery need to be changed in any way?
No.
Thank you. I have no further questions of this witness, Mr. Chairman. I have no further questions of this witness, Mr. Chairman.
So you have 5 spaces in the rear. You're supposed to have 13. And the 13 is calculated how? And that's really for either you, Janice, or for you, Counselor?
Well,
How you came up with the 13 required for
I'm
the
the,
variance?
yeah, I'm the one that came up with the requirement. It's based on square footage. You can't, and I don't know exactly how many square feet the store is off the top of my head, but our ordinance requires 1 space for every 200 square feet for the retail area, and then the apartments upstairs, the parking requirements and the residential site improvement standards.
1.8 units per 1-bedroom dwelling unit.
There you go.
Okay. So, as your proposal calls for each apartment to have 1 space, so that leaves 3. So what happens with the other 3? What's the plan?
I'll let the applicant answer that question. He is more than able to answer that.
Yes, for drivers, I mean, the rest of 3 parking you're talking about?
In the rear?
Yes. Sometimes the drivers use their parking, so that's what we are going to keep it.
The drivers he's speaking of are the delivery drivers,
Delivery
Mr.
drivers,
Carr, correct?
yes.
So they frequently enter and exit
Yes.
the property, so those spaces aren't currently constantly occupied. His employees park on the street. The purpose of assigning 1 space per unit would be to ensure that at least there is one space available for those residents. If the board saw fit to not assign those spaces, the applicant would be amenable to not assigning those spaces. But we thought it would be more appropriate, and it certainly would be more attractive to the residents of that building, that at least one space is available for their use. The restaurant is operated till 12 midnight, but again, after that time, the residents would be able to use the remainder of the spaces.
So the parking in the rear then is really intended for either residents or employees, the drivers?
The drivers, delivery
It's not
drivers.
public parking?
No, it's not.
Because I'm looking at, there's one handicap space noted on the plan. That's the thing that stood out for me the most. It's like, why is there a handicap space back here? And it's not even in the closest proximity to any door,
Yep.
which, normally a handicap space would be. But then I'm wondering, why is it being designated? Is there some requirement that when this isn't going to be a public parking lot, that we have a handicap space in something that's proposed to be not a public parking lot?
I believe that the requirement for handicap parking is for any parking lot, not a public parking lot. Just because it's a parking lot for the residents and the potential
Delivery
employees,
drivers.
the delivery drivers, you have to provide a handicap parking space per ADA.
Yeah, that's interesting. It seems kind of pointless. If, again, you're going to have people who are driving the cars for delivery purposes, and then you're going to have the residents. So basically, I'm assuming that the people who are driving the cars and doing the deliveries can only be but so handicapped if they're able to drive and deliver pizzas to people's
Right.
apartments and stuff. And it just doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense to me.
It's a ADA requirement.
And I'm wondering, is there any, is this is a requirement?
Yeah,
And-
and I think it's important. We have been,
Oh, I know.
there's been litigation if we don't provide for it.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm trying to figure out. I'm well familiar with litigation
Yeah.
about handicap, but seems kind of pointless here.
Could be one of the tenants is handicapped, although.
But the tenant spaces
I
are
don't know
closer
how-
to the door.
But I also
than
don't know how
And
they
we
would
won't.
get upstairs.
Correct. We won't be providing an
Yeah.
elevator, so
Yeah, I just don't,
stairs to the second floor.
That's,
and I understand.
Wondering how that all works.
In looking at the layout, I understand why you have it in the back all the way,
Right.
because that's the only place you can put the side aisle to
Correct.
it and get the spaces in there. But, that's further away from the door than the closest tenant space, so. All right. Any other questions from the board with respect to the applicant's testimony?
I have one question. Is there any special sprinkler system or anything that's required when you put apartments on top of a restaurant like this, just to prevent, injury or death?
I don't know what the trigger is for requiring on-site sprinklers. I don't know if it's maybe the architect?
Once we go through building department review, if it's a requirement, then we will provide it. So normally, what might trigger it is when you convert from 1-2 family to 3 family, so conversion to multiple dwelling, that would trigger a sprinkler system. But it's based on interpretation right now, so that would be something to question the code official. When we get there, we will comply. We'll do whatever needs to be done in order to create a safe space.
Thank you.
Other questions from the board?
Of the architect?
No, I think we'll let the architect make a presentation. I think most of my questions would be for the architect also. But just of the applicant with respect to the proposal overall, what he's testified to so far. Any members of the public who are here would like to question the applicant with regard to what he's testified to so far? And counsel, I'd ask if you'd yield the podium.
Absolutely.
Good evening. William Scott, also the Montclair Housing Commission. With this being an additional plan for residential units, even though it doesn't meet the requirements for a 20% set aside, 1 out of 20 units, 1 out of 5 units there, is there a requirement to make a contribution to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund?
Yes, there is. Under our development fee ordinance would apply.
Okay, okay.
And that's the, you pay 2.5% of the additional assessed valuation of the improvements on this project. That's how you calculate the development fee that goes into our Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
Okay, okay. So there will be a contribution if this
Yep.
application
Yes, there
is-
will be.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? All right, counsel.
Thank you. I would qualify my next witness, architect Carola Rosas. Ms. Rosas, your name and address is already on the record. Where do you maintain your practice? Same address?
Yes, same address.
And how long have you been practicing in the field of architecture?
Over 25 years.
And from what school did you graduate?
Undergraduate at Pratt, Bachelor's of Architecture from Pratt Institute, and a Master's of Architecture from Columbia University.
And you're a licensed architect in the state of New Jersey?
Yes, in New Jersey and New York.
And have you previously testified before zoning and planning boards?
Yes, I have.
And accepted as an expert on each and every occasion?
Yes, I have.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to qualify Ms. Rosas as an expert in the field of architecture.
We'll accept.
Thank you.
Only under one condition. If you move the microphone closer.
I have the same problem.
Or if it's easier, pretend there's no microphone, that you just have to yell at us on
Okay.
the board, and that'll be
That would be
totally
fine.
fine.
That is the
I hope.
problem.
Yeah, you
Because
talk softer than he
Otherwise-
does.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
because like that, it picks up really well for the broadcast, but it's so hard to hear you up here. So just shout at us, and the microphone will pick it up for everybody else.
Okay.
Thank you. Ms. Rosas, would you please describe the site and the development proposal?
Yes, if you could refer to your diagram, and this is the plot plan at the upper right-hand corner. Basically, this lot is an interior lot and measures 50.5 by 97.35. That's a total of 5,004 square feet. This existing zoning district is at NC, which is a neighborhood commercial, where residential is a permitted use. And what we're proposing here, conversion from a commercial use to a mixed use, which is commercial residential. And that is 2 one-bedroom apartment on the second floor, plus a one-story extension to the rear of the commercial space. The existing footprint is 40 by 40, which is 1,600 square feet. We're proposing a second floor, and that's going to be 3,200 square feet, with a one-story extension at the rear, 165 square feet. So we have a total building area of 3,365 square feet. Yes. As for the building setback, we have side yard of 0.4 and 8.9 feet, and a front yard existing of 6.4 feet, and a rear yard of 41.7 feet. Now, we could refer to the first floor plan on the left-hand side. What we're introducing is a main entrance to the second floor that will lead to the 2 one-bedroom apartments. We're also introducing a scuttle and a hatch and with a ladder. So that would be in case if there's a fire, there's a way out to the rooftop. The design is basically a flat roof. And let me also mention the one-story rear extension to the commercial space, which is, again, going to be primarily used for storage. So on the second floor plan, we have 2 one-bedroom apartment, and one of the units, I have it on print for 562, but in fact is 630 square feet, and the apartment facing the front is 685 square feet. Now, this apartment will have a second means of egress using egress windows from the unit. And we're also providing storage area. So both units have a very nice size storage area, at least 10 feet by 5 feet, 50 square feet per unit, in addition to closets, walk-in closets and so on. and down below is the front elevation. Now, what we have there is a masonry building, one-story masonry building, a combination of brick and stucco. And what we're proposing on the second story is a light frame construction, also with stucco to match the existing. And we're providing a cornice, so try to bring back to the historic, based on a review, the putting in a cornice, so it's going to somehow meet the requirements for the historic preservation. And lastly, let me mention the parking space. Originally, what we have out there is 4 parking spaces. We're providing 5 parking spaces. How is that? Rearranging the design. So we have 3 parking spaces facing north, 2 parking spaces facing west. We're also introducing a landscape area toward the rear, left-hand corner of the property. So we'll be providing some trees and landscape, little shrubs, a bench to sit down. In fact, today, this is all asphalt, so it's 100% impervious. We're going to increase the pervious area. Not by much, but it will enhance the area. So create that's nice space next to the handicap parking, no less. So it becomes a little rest space there. And we have a trash area. Will be screened 3 by 5 feet. It'll be at the rear side of the building. And as for drainage and all that, we're not really adding on a large size of square footage. We're really working with the existing square footage. It already has drainage, the way it functions. So basically, we'll be tapping into that and just extending the second floor. So in fact, the site will be improved. I feel it'll be restriped, it'll have new asphalt and refinished, and just made nicer. That's all, with greenery. So if you have any questions.
Just briefly, Ms. Rosas, would you describe the current and proposed lighting for the site? How's the site lit?
Oh, yes. There is an existing light post toward the rear of the one-story building. A bit to the left, there's a light post that gives off light to the rear yard. We're also providing attached lighting onto the building that would help at the rear, at the side where it can provide lighting to the driveway, and also at the entryway, all the entryways, the front of the building. So there'll be sufficient lighting at the site.
Are those lights shown on the plan?
Yes, I do show it. The one-story rear build, the one-story extension, you see right at the left-hand corner of it, there's a little light. Yes, it's a light post.
That's in the upper right of the drawing?
It is
There's
on
a
the
sheet?
drawing. It's
Okay.
on the drawing. You see a little star?
I think it's right next to the car. There's a little.
Yes, right next to it. That's it. That's
Small
a light
symbol?
post. That's
Okay.
a light post, okay? And we're also providing light, wherever you see the little light, it's a miniature little light symbol.
No.
You can see attached to the one-story building, and also the rear of the property, the main building, and also the side of the building.
Where's
So
the,
there's one light at the front of the car, and then there's another light on the building
Yes,
near the side of the car.
yes.
Am I reading that correctly?
Yes, correct. One is existing, which is a light post. It's a light post, existing. We have one at the one-story extension. And also, we have additional lighting at the rear of the main building.
Okay.
So where is the lighting at the rear? I see you have lights along it looks like maybe 2 lights, one over the door, kind of, or close to the door, and then
Yes.
one under the, I guess that's the easternmost window.
Yes.
So that lights up the building there. What about the driveway?
We
Are there
have a
any
light.
lights in the driveway?
Yes, you can see along the driveway, I have a light in the driveway too.
And that is an existing light fixture, correct?
Yes.
Building
It's hard to tell.
The one on the side on the driveway is building mounted light?
Mounted on the building, yes. It will all the lighting will be on the building. So.
Except the light pole in the
Except
rear
light
yard.
pole.
So those
It's
lights are sufficient to light up that, that entire drive?
Yes, in fact, the light post is
Yes.
sufficient.
Well, the
Right
light
now.
post, you're saying the light post in the back
In the
is
back
sufficient to
already.
light up the
Yes.
entire back, but what about the driveway? Because that's a canyon between the apartment building and the building that we're talking about here, and your tenants coming in at night are going to have to park in the back and then walk all the way around to the front.
Yes.
So, you know, I would think that we might want to have more than one light in the driveway.
We would provide more than one light. That's not a problem.
And what about the, and in the front of the building, the lights that are along the front of the building, those are proposed to stay on 24, all through the evening, all through the night? You have two lights at the top.
Yes.
One on basically under the outer portions of the two outer window banks
Yes.
for the second story. Are those going to be on all night?
Yes.
Or are they timed with the business, or what?
Right now, we have for the business, right now. And if they require, so that we can run on for 24 hours.
Well, my concern is, again, you've got your front door to the residential there on the
Yes, you
street,
have to provide
and
that.
wanting,
Yeah.
wanting to have that lit.
Sure.
I think it's
Um,
required.
And insofar as the designation for the residential function, is there going to be will it share the same street number? Will there be a division? Will it get a special designation? And in other words, how would visitors know if somebody's going there where the apartments are? Or, you know, it's going to look, it's very close, it's right next to the Domino's window,
Right.
and it's gonna, and it's opening, it's facing, when you look through it, it's facing a wall, because the stairway, you know, when you look at it, you'd have to kind of look at an angle, because the stairway is to the right of it. So will there be something there to show that that's a residential entrance, as opposed to part of the function for the commercial space for the Domino's Pizza on the first floor?
Sure, we could put a canopy or address, number on the door or something, yes. We could designate it differently.
If you're doing a canopy, that should be shown on the plans.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, there's a few things that we're going to have to have added to these plans.
Any kind
So-
of a change in signage or canopies all have to be shown on the site plan, and they're usually reviewed, because it's in the historic district as well.
I know they have a lot, they've got questions.
Put sign, numbers, second floor.
Perhaps a sign placard might make more sense rather than a canopy. I mean, the canopy might actually detract from the historic, I mean, we'd be back before the Historic Preservation Committee. Might get in trouble by the HPC if we put a canopy over there.
Well, it sounds like they weren't too thrilled with a fully stucco building,
Well,
to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, I agree there.
Yeah,
We've,
we're not too thrilled with it
Yeah.
either.
Yeah, so let
So
me,
you
We
may,
are open for
you may end up
suggestions.
going back to HPC. to
Either
iron
way.
that one out.
let me start with some of this, and then I'm sure my colleagues will jump in with more specificity. So, Ms. Rojas, you're aware that this is a building that falls within the Pine Street Historic District?
Yes.
And you're aware that the HPC made a number of specific recommendations about what they felt was inappropriate and things that they felt were appropriate.
Yes.
Could you describe how you complied with what they felt should happen with this building and what you have not done as it relates to the comments that the HPC had from the report of Hickey and et cetera? Hickey and Donnelly, yes. Could you just start with a generalized commentary on that? They have a number of recommendations.
Yes. Well, basically, they were talking about one of the features had to do with the cornice. So in fact, I did introduce a cornice here, and I did play with the roof line and introduce a cornice. But keep in mind, it's a light frame construction, so we don't have. It's not masonry. It will be.
It's not what, I'm sorry?
Masonry. It's not masonry, so it's a light frame construction. So, of course, mimicking the cornice effect, and I have a detail there provided at
I
the
saw
lower
that.
right-hand corner.
I saw that.
Right, and...
So you
and-
propose to put in this case, a stucco cornice,
Yes,
a lightweight stucco
Yes.
cornice, to mimic...
to mimic a traditional cornice.
Right, some of those older cornices are metal as well.
They're metal and they're heavy
Yeah.
for masonry.
Right.
Yes,
So,
parapets.
so you're fulfilling the cornice. Why don't you go through the particular recommendations, so we can just track this 1 through 5, and then the comments, and then we can see where you did and didn't follow what they had suggested.
Okay, so the windows are double hung windows, right? So
Right.
I changed the windows. The windows are in pair now, double hung. And yes, we can show additional mullions. Okay, we can do that. I didn't show it on the plan, but
Additional what?
mullions.
Mullions?
Yes.
Well, for instance, they're saying, just to be clear, they're saying that you have a discrepancy. On the second floor, you have a double hung and show the mullions, and on the first floor, you don't. So are you saying there are or are not mullions on the first floor windows?
No, I do show it. That was, I think, one of the older versions where they mentioned this. I did correct it. I do show the mullion there.
Well, what we have right here shows no mullions on the first floor. Shows it on the second.
Oh, that's what I meant, on the second floor, yes.
So
Hold on.
again, for clarification, are there mullions on the first floor windows?
Oh, first floor, correct, okay.
No, are there mullions on the first floor
No,
windows?
there's no mullions on the first floor.
Okay, so you're not following the HBC's recommendation on that particular one, right?
Not for the first floor.
Okay. Why don't we continue down the list?
The commercial space, first floor. It's existing, existing windows, but go ahead. All right.
So you're keeping the existing windows on the first floor, is that correct?
Yes. So at this point, I don't show mullions. I mean, there was a discussion about, in this kind of situation, you can get additional mullions and add it onto it. I guess there are companies that do that.
That's correct.
Right, so we can do that.
So you're saying you're willing to put the applied mullions?
Yes.
On the first floor?
Yes, if that's a requirement and that's what's asked of us, yes, we would do that.
Okay.
Okay?
And you expect to go back to the HPC to review these details?
Yes, I guess they.
If the
I
board-
resubmit
if
if they want.
If
If
the
the
board
board
requires that as a
requires that. Normally, it's not
they
required, but
can
you
come
can
back
always
here.
make it a condition.
Okay.
Fine. Okay, let's do number 2, water table. It's not clear from the diagram, from the plan, that there is a water table here. In fact, they seem to say that it's removed or not shown. Can you just clarify that? Because you're showing what appears to be a water table now at the top of what is the first floor, but it's not showing any kind of protrusion there, and it's not showing on your exterior wall plan. So right below the second floor windows.
Yes.
Is that a water table?
That's, we discussed that during our last meeting, and basically, that's a horizontal band. That was introduced with the idea when you do these renovations and you're dealing with add-ons, you can never get a perfect smooth surface. So, and the fact that we have a different building type, we have masonry at the bottom, existing masonry, and a light frame construction above, it would never be a smooth, continuous construction.
So you're building out a bump?
Yes, building out a bump, so
Uh-huh.
that way to bond the two, and they discussed it, and they say, okay,
Okay.
that would be understandable.
And as proposed here, I guess that's also going to be stucco too?
Yes, all
So
stucco.
that can be considered a water table above.
Okay.
Is there a water table at the bottom?
No,
So there is no water table at the bottom?
To-
There's a brick water table now.
Yeah, I was going to ask, does that mean that's going to be removed?
No, I will, yeah, maybe, no,
Are these windows that you're putting in, are you replacing the windows on the first floor or keeping the same windows?
the window right now is divided into smaller segments, so we're making larger windows, and that's also one recommendation. Lowering the windows, and also larger, because in fact, I think it's 3 feet wide, or, I don't know, smaller. Yeah, so make nice, larger, big windows, and that was a recommendation too from one of our previous meetings, so we did that.
So let's now come to the brick issue, because
Yes.
this is a major one that the HPC has noted.
Okay.
The building now is currently defined as an intrusion in the historic district because it's a stucco building surrounded by brick buildings. You're proposing to further create an intrusion situation as opposed to taking the building that has existing brick and further staying with brick in this case, or even keeping the brick at the bottom and doing stucco at the top, or some combination of the two.
Okay.
Why don't you go with brick for the entire facade of the building? Since you have brick at the bottom, why wouldn't you get a half brick and use that at the top, for instance, to continue the brick look of the building and therefore be less of an intrusion in the historic district, which the HPC has identified?
Well, the main building is really stucco, and that's just a band of brick. It's a band of brick, I understand, and that's going to have to be,
Is the main building now stucco?
yes, it's
Okay.
block on stucco. So the brick is very minor. That's a cost issue. So I just always keeping, costs into consideration.
Is that a full brick or is it a veneer that's been, I mean, it's all veneer.
It's a veneer, it's a veneer, but it's only
Is it
so,
full brick dimension?
I believe so.
So it's not an application that happened?
No, maybe not. It might be, but it's low and it's
It's what? I can't hear what
low,
you...
low. It's low. It's a low
2.5
band of
feet.
brick. It's low. 3
Yeah.
feet, no more. 2.5 feet.
But
no
it's
more.
half brick, right? It's like it's not full brick.
I
It
don't
looks
know.
like it's full brick.
Yeah,
Full brick.
probably. A
I'm just
veneer.
trying, I'm having a hard time hearing.
Veneer.
Veneer,
A veneer.
full brick veneer.
Full brick veneer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Veneer? Right, so it's like the rest of the building. So are you saying you're unwilling to use a brick veneer on the building to create less of an intrusion that the HPC is identifying at this point? Is that your testimony at this time?
Mr. Schwartz, I think this is something that, it's obvious to me at least, I'm sure it's obvious to most of the board and the board's experts that we aren't going to be finishing this application here tonight. So I just would love to get as many comments as we can from the board, but this is a conversation that I'll have to have with regard to cost with the architect and the client, and it's not something that we could give an answer to right here tonight, unfortunately, because cost obviously does play a large role in whether this application or development eventually ever gets constructed. So I would ask that we reserve that answer till we return back before the board, but I would appreciate it if we could move forward and go through whatever other comments the board may have with regard to the application.
Questions then, I mean, we're just asking questions.
Oh, no, we appreciate the questions, but we can't answer that, whether we could give that, because we don't know that answer at this point.
Well, let me ask you, why are you lowering the windows? So you're taking those windows that are up, fairly high and you're dropping them down. Is there a business reason for doing that?
Yes, more clearance.
What's that?
More clearance, I mean, it is a small portion of the windows, the bottom ones.
Well, your windows now, so you want a lower window?
No, we don't want a lower window, we want to open the windows. Whatever the
We
size.
did
of-
we did
Your
lower-
windows, your window's now about 3 feet.
Yeah.
The bottom of the window is about 3 feet from the
Yeah.
sidewalk. You're taking that windowsill and you're dropping it down to 1 foot 1 inch.
Yeah, that's-
What's the purpose of dropping the window so low?
Well,
Also, if cost is a consideration, and I'm suggesting this, why not keep the windows in the location they're at, maybe change them out, put some mullions on, and rather than spend that money on moving the windows,
Keep the brick.
keep the brick and brick the rest, veneer brick the rest of the building, at least in the front,
Yes.
which would then tie that building in much more to the streetscape, thank you, And that would then, the money you'd end up moving to cut different holes and cut into the facade, you could put into the surface of the brick and make the building look much more appropriate for the setting. And I think possibly the board would consider even stucco on the sides, depending on how much space there is and being seen between the buildings, or at least some. So it just doesn't seem to make logical sense if cost is the main
Yeah,
consideration.
you're completely rebuilding your window openings,
Exactly.
which seems like would add a lot of expense.
Exactly.
And we know you have to
Yeah.
create an entrance for the apartment.
Yes.
But that's only on one side. So, the other side theoretically is going to remain, the windows and the door is going to remain in the same place, right? So you wouldn't have to touch those.
And you have a water table already right there at a more appropriate construction setting, because it really bringing the windows down to the bottom is just out of character for that location, that street. So on multiple levels, it just doesn't seem to make much sense.
I think it was one of the previous, meetings that we had where they say, the windows seem closed, open it up, why so much division and all that. So that was a response to that. Yeah.
Well, the windows that you have now look like they're actually larger. They're taller. They go up, I guess 2 feet over the top of the door, and the new windows only are at the height of the door.
No, it's not a reduction, it's...
Well, I'll
okay.
show you, here's a photograph.
No, I understand. The photograph is correct. I mean...
So
I
the
understand.
plans are not correct?
Yeah, the plans
I
show
mean-
the top of the windows being
Yeah.
even with the top of the door, so you're essentially shifting the window.
No, there
Downward.
will be no change to that. I
These
understand. You're right.
windows.
You're right. I could overlook.
So the plans need to be revised.
Yes. No, I wouldn't change the header
Windows are
size,
kind
of
of low
course.
end, but that's accurate.
Oh, okay.
And that's just, yeah.
Oh, in that case, they will be significantly taller then. The tops should be as we see on the actual photo.
Yes,
Existing
definitely.
now, and then the
Yes.
bottom would be
Yes,
about
I
a
wouldn't
foot and an
lower the
inch.
height. It doesn't make sense. yeah.
Right.
They wouldn't want to go there.
Oh, you are lowering them?
No.
You're
Keeping the header.
keeping the header and
where
the sill the same, okay.
Yes.
No, but keeping the header, but the bottom.
The
I
bottom.
think I think she
No.
intended to keep the
Yeah.
windows exactly where they are, except the width of them.
I think perhaps it would help if we had revised plans that showed the correct location of the windows.
Yeah.
mean,
I
this is-
think we're going to have revised plans showing a whole lot of different things, but if we
Yeah,
could
it's
continue
just-
on, I know it's tough to trudge through, but every little bit helps us.
Listen, if you want comments,
Yeah.
I mean, we've looked at this.
know.
I think if
My
you,
final thing.
just to move this along.
Yes, please.
As opposed to questions, if you want to get to some comments. If you brick
Yes.
the near of the building, the front, and, keep the water table that you have, again, where you show the upper band, that's fine, and then brick up to the top, and, okay, plenty of places now use a stucco cornice that mimics, metal.
And wouldn't a lightweight metal
Yeah.
be lighter than stucco, than the wooden stucco? I mean,
It's possible.
I would think that you would get something that was sturdy, that could still be lighter than wood with stucco laid over top of it, and would give you a nicer finish. I mean, we understand, the concern about cost, but this building's going to be there for a while.
Yeah.
That's our hope as well.
And so, we wanted to contribute to the streetscape.
What about the corners of the other buildings? How are they treated?
I guess I'll jump in.
Go ahead.
Will you then, since we talked about lighting for a little bit, will you then prepare a lighting plan?
We would absolutely be willing to prepare a lighting plan.
And by that, I mean, we need to show the foot candle illumination.
Understood.
As you see, along the driveway and in the
Understood.
parking lot, so
And-
not just, and the details.
Details, lights and fixtures.
Details of the lights.
And they need to
Yeah.
also do the other
And
side.
another thing that would help,
Because the other side
I
is
think I know
white.
where the property line is on your site plan, but if you can darken the, if you can make the lines that are the property line a little darker, or a dash line, so we can distinguish what the property boundary is?
Dark red, dark brown.
And if you can provide a landscaping plan as well, what the plantings are Hopefully they're all native plantings.
And calculate the reduction in the impervious coverage.
We
We need
will.
a number for that?
Of course.
Okay.
So we just looked at this on Google, shared Google Street. The chair suggested, confirming my thoughts, that a brick veneer with the water table, the band, metal cornice, if you can do that, and then turn the corner and use you could
Have the veneer turn the corner.
have the veneer
I
turn the
understand.
And do
corner.
the rest of it, you could do the rest of it
Stucco.
Because it's down the alley.
A darker stucco, so the eye doesn't go to it, and
You know, and also the other side of the building, in between the crowd around, is painted white. It's a totally different color than the rest of the building, so
Painted to match.
if you can, you know, get that in a dark color too to match the other side. You know, then you start, with that, you'll start to look like the other buildings that are across the street and that are down as you go around the curve. You know, take your inspiration of what you're, you know, looking from those buildings. You know, and have, you know, appropriate light fixtures, you know, around the building to light it up for safety. That area sometimes makes people nervous, so in the evenings, so you want to make sure that it's well lit.
Of course.
So that nobody has any issues, and certainly you want to make it attractive for your tenants.
With regard to the designation of the residential entrance, there was some thought of a canopy there. Would a placard be sufficient?
If you did,
mean,
I don't know how the mailing address is going to go, whether it will have the same number, or whether it will have like a sub number,
I
like a
think it would,
33A or
yeah,
whatever,
that's-
59A, but something that shows the number, a nice placard with a light above the door.
Understood.
You know, certainly would, you know, be consistent with how how other buildings have handled it.
Yeah, so a placard would suffice, and if possible to see for each entrances, just so that we can kind of see where they would be located.
Sure.
Because I would imagine the Domino's would need something similar.
right now you have no pediments above or trim bands above the first floor windows. And you might consider, particularly if you're keeping the windows, you can turn the brick the other way and use the brick, even the veneer brick or regular brick there as a window pediment, as you know.
Isn't that
Yeah, no, that's the band, but I'm talking about the first floor.
you're talking right above
Above
the first floor
yeah,
windows.
in other words, they've got trim bands here
Right.
around the second floor windows.
Right.
There's nothing here making them.
It's flush.
It's flush. So if you're brick veneering, you could create,
A different pattern going around the windows
to give it a trim band.
Right.
And I would say the HPC is where their architects is the place for them to.
Well, they've asked in their last one was they wanted you to come back to review all of the
I believe
materials.
they asked that
and-
the planning board condition this application, if it is approved, on us returning before the HPC for final approval for trim, for color, et cetera, et cetera.
So, why don't you bring your brick veneer samples.
Back to
your-
them first.
Your cornice, your this, your that, and, you know.
Are you saying go back to them first before they come back to the planning board?
Then it would probably be a more pro forma approval here.
I mean, people would, if we know that they're satisfied with it, you know, it would, once you come to us, then it would be
Right.
over and done with.
The
for
applicant is
most
not
part.
averse to that. We
Okay.
would absolutely be willing to go back before the HPC, show them our revised plans, and get their comments, and hopefully get their sign-off, so that next time we come before this board, the board feels more comfortable in weighing in on the
And really what you're looking
application.
for them is the building materials. We're
course.
looking for all the other stuff, you know, the lighting and the landscaping.
No,
I need details on the dumpster.
Yep.
It's got to be on a concrete pad.
The roof,
The
Yeah,
roof
it's
of the
got
dumpster.
roof detail.
And a roof
The
detail.
fence
For
and
the
gate
building.
details for the dumpster.
Do you have, you have air conditioning units that'll be placed on top of the building?
Placed on the condenser units, 2 units placed over the one-story building.
We'll provide a roof plan.
You know, and sound deadening because you've got an apartment building there on the other side of the driveway. So you don't want that, you want to try and minimize the noise from the condensers.
And the units back off the street, so, to the extent possible.
They're going to be you're planning in the back, on the one-story
At the
portion.
one-story.
You know, there are apartments actually over above the 2 floors of apartments on the corner building, as well as the apartment building that's on the other side. So you want to try and minimize the noise from the AC as much as possible.
Yes, it would be above the additional storage area, is that right? Where the units would be?
No. The
Yes.
additional storage area would be 1 story.
It's
Yes.
above.
Well, hang on.
Yes.
And that's where
The
the
architect
units
said
would
yes.
go.
Yes.
It's incorrect. The roof is 2 stories. So
The roof
the-
is 2 stories, but she's
But there's
saying
a
that the
one-story
condensers are going on
storage.
the one-story portion.
The condensers are going on,
The one
The
story,
new-
over the one-story storage. The one-story building, the 165 square feet, the addition.
Yeah, the new
That's-
storage addition
Yes.
that's going on the back.
That's right.
I stand
They're
corrected.
actually going to be below most of the apartment windows in the area. So we would want to make sure that the noise is sufficiently buffered, and it's probably better to have them on the second-story roof at the rear, so
That's-
that so that the sound, if you can thereby channel the sound up, as opposed to having to deal, if you channel the sound up from 1 story, you're still going to impact the higher stories on the 2 buildings on the either side, because those buildings will still be taller than this building.
Well, frankly, where the condenser units are shown on the plan on that 1-story roof, it's right outside the bedroom window for the new second story. Just, it doesn't seem to make
If you put them
a lot
on
of
the
sense
roof,
right there.
on the new roof, if you put them on that second story, then you can surround it with like a fence kind of barrier. It'll channel that channels the sound straight up, and that'll probably be quieter for everybody.
That was my main concern, and just so we know, was there a reason that they would perhaps need to be on the storage, or they could, okay.
No, it was, on one of the previous meetings, they recommended to put it on that one-story roof.
Okay, so I think
So
on the
basically-
highest level would be
Yeah.
best, but yeah.
I think to some degree also, there is some disconnect between the recommendations that were made at the HPC level. So now it's probably best that we do go back to the HPC, explain
Right.
to them the concerns of the board and the board had voiced. Maybe we could get some of their buy-in on some of your comments, and we can go from there.
I think perhaps if we have the HPC focus on the materials and the other site plan issues are really primarily the jurisdiction of the planning board.
Right. Yep.
But, so this is worth just discussing for one more second here. So their concern, I imagine, was visibility from the street level on the roof. So if it's even possible to see what that would look like on the updated plans, that would be great. Because I'm not sure that you actually would see it if it's positioned on the backside, as was
I don't think so.
suggested.
I don't think you would at
You
all.
won't
So,
either if it's
so
in the
right, so
back.
yeah, I think that would help allay any concerns there.
And one other housekeeping item, if you could just put dates. It's really hard. This is the 3rd or 4th version we have of the plans. They need to be dated.
Include
Otherwise,
revision
we
dates.
can't keep track of which version we're working with.
Yeah, I had a couple more questions. The drainage from the roof, where does that currently go now?
It would, yeah. Well-
Mr. Kokar, where do the roof leaders drain to now?
Front of the building.
Well, basically, the design, it kind of taps into those existing bleeders.
So do they go
Electric.
underground, or do they just discharge right onto the pavement?
Underground,
Underground?
yes, and then go to the street.
Underground and then to the street to clarify.
Okay, as long as it doesn't discharge onto the driveway or into the parking lot, and you'll maintain that condition, I think that's fine. And then Mr. Watkinson had prepared a report as well.
We'd be happy to go over it if you have time.
The board is saying they want the roof leaders to go underground to the existing drain?
I understand that's where they're going now, so I
I'm
would,
not sure they are, but
well,
I think they need to be, I think the plan needs to document where the existing drainage is and how everything is connected. I think they kind of go over ground.
now see, that's what I don't want to have, because it's a safety issue. Especially since you're going to have residents parking in the back, then walking along the driveway to the front door, the only door.
And you need to determine where that discharge goes from the existing basin in the parking lot. Where does that actually connect to another sewer? I don't think it goes out through the curb in the street.
Is that the trench you're talking about, Tom?
Yeah, it's a drain, it's like an inlet.
Okay. Yeah, it's shown on the plans here, I see it.
This is
And then did I hear earlier that the parking lot's going to be restriped and new asphalt's going to be placed?
That is correct.
Okay.
You need to detail that on the plan, notes to that effect.
And then my one other question, I saw that the trash bin says it's a 3x5 area, and I think Mr. Kokar testified that his trash bins are about 2x5.
No, 3x5.
What was that?
What?
3x5 container.
Yeah, what's the size of the dumpster?
Of the actual dumpster, I think you said it was.
And you'll need a larger
Well,
enclosure.
then the enclosure can't be the size of the dumpster.
Yeah, that's where I was going. Just double check that when you're revising the plans. I think that's all I have, John.
Did I send you the comments from the fire official about?
I didn't receive them.
Okay.
But please send them, and we're happy to address
I'm just saying,
any-
all he wants you to do is the entrance is to stripe both sides of the entrance driveway as a fire lane,
Got it.
because he doesn't want that blocked.
And so there's only one way in and out of these
Right.
apartments.
Correct.
And then there's this hatch that goes to the roof, but is there a ladder that
Yes, a ladder.
goes down from the roof?
No, a ladder to the, normally,
You have a ladder going up
up,
to the roof, but once they get up there,
then they,
is there a way to get back down
No,
without
but-
the fire department, you know?
but normally, normally two-story buildings, the least you could do to a two-story building is provide a scuttle and with a ladder. So if there's a fire below, you can run safely up to the roof, get away from fire. Or the other way around, there's a fire above, you can run out. So it's always two ways. You don't get trapped within the hallways.
I think the board member's question is, from once the individuals are on the roof, there's no way for them to get off of that roof without the fire department assisting.
Fire department assistance, normally.
Hope they get there in time. Yeah, I feel a little bit better about that. Any other questions or comments? Board members?
One last one on the site plan, if you locate the doors to the building so we know where the rear door is. There's a couple boxes that are unidentified in the rear, so, and I know you've got a door back there, so you could put the front door in the building, the back door, so we can see where the egress is.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see on the first floor plan, you can see the doors in relation to those little pads, those concrete pads. So we do have two doors, existing doors.
Are those boxes the concrete pads?
Yeah, a pad, like a little stepping pad.
And so when you come back, we'd like you to give us a colorized rendering of the facade.
Color.
You know, and as all the detail, as much as possible, so that we can have a clear picture, clear as we can, of what it will look like, what it's intended to look like. Anything else? Anything from the public? All right.
I appreciate the board's time. I would ask just to preserve the notice if we could make
Another date.
another date, yeah, if that would be possible. I mean, we could put it off, I think we're at least 2 months out. I think that is reasonable. But if you wanted to,
And that'll give you time to work with to meet with the HPC.
exactly correct.
So that
So
means.
we're talking January?
No, it'd be
Happy New Year.
December 3rd, or you want to go to, because I don't have a
That's-
January.
Right, well, this
Yes,
is...
we can
this
always
is-
adjourn
January.
further.
this
I
is-
would take the furthest, yeah, I'd take the
This
December 3rd
is
date.
October now, so, I mean, we're October 15th now,
Right.
Yeah,
so...
December 3rd sounds reasonable. I think we could either get it done by then or have a good idea of
Right,
how
if
long
not-
it'll take.
If not,
Does-
December 3rd, we will.
We'll carry it.
Carry it to the next meeting, but
Okay.
for now, December 3rd. Okay.
All right.
I thank the board very much for its time and comments, and we will be back.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
5-minute break, or our discussion on the zoning ordinance? You want to just, we just have one thing left.
Yeah.
Let's
good.
power through it.
I know, it's cold.
Discussing an ordinance change. So I think the next item on the agenda is a discussion of a potential ordinance change
Right.
regarding restrictions on demolition of residential structures. Okay. I know, Arthur, you had prepared that report. I made copies if you want me to distribute that to everybody.
Yes,
Okay.
from a while ago. Want me to start talking? Sure. Thank you, Janice. So, yes, I had suggested this be brought back to the table due to the proposed knockdown of two major residential buildings up that were in the papers and in the media. One on Lloyd Road, one on Undercliff, connecting them into a huge development in the process, but yet knocking down two older, not historic buildings, but buildings in what was the proposed historic district. And this brings up the issue of overall historic districts, designation of residential properties as historic, and protection of our older homes, which, as we all know, our architectural charm and character is one of the major selling points that Montclair has, that brings residential buyers to town and brings people to town as guests and visitors for day tours and as a regional destination center. So we used to have, for history, a 75-year no knockdown law that was on the books for a considerable amount of time following the demolition of the Marlborough Inn. Ostensibly, there was a change in state zoning designations, the time of application law, and my understanding is that as a result, the planner had the council then remove the 75-year no knockdown law. And the problem with that is that our older buildings are now at risk of an automatic demo permit should someone, as in this case, acquire two properties next to each other and want to create, in this case, some have described as a McMansion type build. So the question is, and as many have suggested, do we bring back some kind of no knockdown law? And I propose that we do, taking into consideration the time of application issues, by creating effectively a light preservation zone for the township that protects older homes 75 years or older from knockdown, from an automatic knockdown and an automatic demo permit being granted by the building department, but still allows for exterior modifications of those buildings that are not designated historic. And then the challenge is, how do we comply with the time of application rule with both sufficient notice of this zone and awareness for buyers in the process? And we've begun to kick that around informally with some conversations with the HPC, and they're going to be addressing this next week. but we do have a designation listing of over 1,000 homes created by the Junior League some years ago. And I believe that we could use this particular list with pictures as the basis for that designation of homes that warrant this kind of light preservation designation.
You said over 75 years? Is that what you said?
Over 75, just a suggestion, this has to be refined, that we use that list as the initial basis for designation with a mandate that it be updated with new pictures, and if in the process, say the HPC did not feel the picture from years ago did not adhere to what's today and it didn't warrant that it be removed from the list. But at least we have some basis for designation to start with, that list then be applied to the property cards down at Town Hall for notice purposes, so that we then adhere to the compliance part of the time of application rule, so that there is indeed notice and awareness of this light protection zone. Let's call it a protection zone. And then that if indeed, as part of a to-be-written ordinance, if someone disagrees with that designation, that it's not warranted protection, that they have an appeal process through the HPC or some designation like that. Anyway, that's the broad strokes proposal for bringing back this particular ordinance that sat on the books and protected the township, because otherwise we will slowly but surely begin to lose our older homes, and we've seen a couple of them go each year. One from Watchung just went, last year it was from Lorraine, now these two major homes. So slowly over time you start to get intrusions into areas. For instance, on South Mountain, an older home went, and then you had some modernist out-of-character box there. So anyway, that's the concept. The details obviously need to be more fully refined, but I propose that the board send this over to a subcommittee for drafting and review and to work with the HPC, and that we try to create an ordinance to bring back this no knockdown designation based on the existing laws.
Just maybe before we go into the legal ramifications, just to give you a little bit of background information, when the 75-year rule was eliminated, the HPC was really tasked with creating new historic districts. The appropriate way to do this is to designate historic districts. That's how you protect your historic structures, and I think that's the intent of the municipal land use law. And in fact, the HPC has been working on that, at least on the on the commercial side, and in fact this year they have a grant application in to start designating residential districts, because I'm all for doing it, but procedurally you have to go through a process. You have to designate the districts, you have to notify the property owners, you have to go through the process even with a light residential, because we've talked about this in the historic preservation element about creating these residential districts. But you do have to go through the procedural process and give the property and it's zoning. When you close off, it's a zoning power, and so you do have to go through that certain route.
That sounds great in theory, but in practice, as we know, the HPC does not have the funding and the manpower to designate homes individually, nor have they shown the propensity to create fully designated historic districts. This is an interim step to mitigate knockdowns while keeping the option for further designations alive and keeping the options for further historic districts alive. But the fact is the HPC cannot and has not gone through the township and taken those 1,000 homes and determined which of them should be designated historic and which of them should not. And so this interim this interim protection zone that maintains our character, allows people to still renovate their homes on the exterior. It doesn't inhibit them in that way. They don't have to come before the HPC to change out a window, but it prevents the home from globally being knocked down and prevents more subdivisions and McMansion builds of the type we're seeing here. That's the intent.
And one other comment. The demolition requirements in the ordinance do not prevent demolition. It does not prevent it. It delays it. So if you look at where you have the old ordinance where we were prohibited from demolishing it, they had a year, the applicant had a year in which the township had the opportunity to either purchase it or find a buyer of the historic structure before the demolition permit could be issued.
And that served very well in protecting homes during that period, because
it doesn't automatically mean that it can't be demolished.
Without,
that's what I'm
without a
pointing
doubt.
out.
It doesn't automatically prevent it, but it creates a mechanism where it's harder to knock it down. It creates some obstacles to do so, and creates conditions where people can purchase it. It delays and prevents the process, and served quite well to do that. I don't believe there was any older home knocked down during that period when the law was in effect.
Oh yeah, there were.
I don't remember any accordingly.
There are lots of, if you're using 70, let's say 75 years, okay? All of the houses that I've lived in this town, which is really a grand total of 4, all of them are over 75 years old. And with the, with the exception of maybe the house that I'm living in now that I happen to think I like it, but the other ones were kind of ho-hum, ordinary colonials. They just happen to be built like in the 20s, and they, why would you'd have to have a better way. You'd have to have a better way of
there is a list.
there's
There's a designated list that the Junior League put together, and I believe we should use that list as the basis with a requirement that it be updated.
And then what's the structure? You're saying that, okay, if you're
can't draft it here.
Hold on for a second. Just in broad strokes. If you're saying that we have a list that the Junior League or HPC has looked, and these are worthwhile architectural specimens, that we want to preserve, then what would be the procedure? You have this ordinance again that will just delay and say, okay, you got to take this breathing period before you can knock it down, or during this breathing period we would have the option to do X, Y, and Z before you're allowed to knock it down? Or are you thinking that this is going to be an indefinite delay, that they're going to have to appeal it in order to get it knocked down? Or
No,
how do you see that?
I think we have to work through the details. The language of the older law worked quite well as an interim step, and obviously it's been a number of years since, and I'm not sure 75 years is the right number. We have to kind of work through that. But again, that list of homes that the HPC, that the Junior League put together represented a wide array of our housing stock, and I think if we use that as the basis, we can create this protection zone that with a mechanism.
First of all, I don't think we should be calling it a zone, because it's really not a zone. You're talking about designating properties. You're not talking, a zone is an area that encompasses blocks.
It's a
blocks,
town-wide zone.
But
even each of our individual historic landmarks is like it's in a historic landmark zone.
Yes.
You're using the zoning power to protect.
Right, but these aren't. This isn't. You're talking about houses all across the town. There is no. The whole town is the zone. So that's a little bit. That's a little bit.
Calling it a protection zone.
But and that's semantics.
That's
I don't mean to get
Yeah.
distracted on that. But
I think the step is to move this to subcommittee, to work with Art, and see if we can come up with a proposed ordinance, talking with the HPC, reviewing how we would designate, how this would be enforced, how it would work. I think the devil is in the detail here.
Well, here's, from my opinion, short and sweet, is that if you can come up with a plan that accomplishes those goals that you're talking about, that's legal, that we can legally do, and that is better or more effective than the traditional, what the HPC was supposed to be doing about designating historic properties. Because if you're going through all the same, machinations in order to get,
it's complementary.
you might as well just go ahead and start the process to designate a property.
That's much more intrusive.
But I'm saying,
much more
if it's more efficient, if it's legal, and it accomplishes the goal, and it's more efficient than the traditional designation, then I might be willing to consider it to see what it looks like. But I don't know whether you can get something that has those three elements.
I know the borough of Glen Ridge designated the entire borough as a basic, almost the entire borough as a historic district. Now, if you could do that,
the whole town.
But hold on.
do it under the light category.
Hold on. I want to clarify. The difference is, when you are fully designated, you must come before the HPC for any external modification to the building that is seen from the street, effectively. Under this proposal, with language to be worked through, you would not have that level of oversight. We would not be telling people they had to change their window in a particular way.
You're just saying you can't knock it down.
You can't knock the building down.
So I could take my historic, which is I think what a property did on Park Street like 30 years ago. Take a very traditional house and zhuzh it up with modern windows and blocking and new kind of siding, and it really looked hideous, but it totally lost all of its, relevancy in terms of architectural relevancy, but it wouldn't prevent something like that from happening.
What's the line? The perfect is the better.
Are there models somewhere in terms of achieving that? And we had a knockdown prevention. What was the flaws in it? I mean, is there a way to look at what we had and improve it? Is there a way to look at a model to see what's available?
It worked very well, but we can't implement that because of this time of application rule again. We have to use that as a basis and come up with another way of providing notice, so that, because that effectively created a stopgap, but it seemed to violate the time of application law, where somebody could come in and say, okay, I want to do X. So we have to now finesse this in language to see if we can come up with something that, as John said, that's both legal and accomplishes the goals at hand.
May I, just because I'm trying to understand, and I see it as a laudable goal to do what you're doing, or at least trying to do what you're doing, Martin. The 75 years was considered, I think, arbitrary. So one of the questions I have is, what determines, or if in your conception, what would determine whether a structure could or could not be demolished? What would the criteria
or subject
be?
To this.
Yeah, this is exactly this kind of detail based on architectural style. In the 20s, there was a big rush to take colonials and turn them into Tudors. There was a whole Tudor rush in the 20s. But the town is filled with actually lovely colonials that are no different. They're effectively replicas of buildings built 100+ years ago. They're also colonials from the turn of the century. There are different periods where colonials hit. The 20s had a lot of great Tudors. So I think this is where we need some collaboration with the HPC to define, whether it's 100 years or 75 years, because the law was implemented a while ago, and or is it architectural based? The goal is still, as you say, laudable. Protect the town's older housing stock from knockdown. I'm proposing this light protection zone that does not fully designate the building, so they don't have to come before the HPC, and yet still leaving the door open for the HPC to individually designate those homes they believe warrant full historic protection.
But can you do that? But can you do that without giving the homeowner the opportunity to, object to it and to
Yes,
fight
we're going
it.
to have an appeal mechanism within the ordinance,
So,
absolutely.
But why don't we, not within the ordinance, but before it can be designated?
Right, exactly.
You have to do it up front. You can't just say designated, now challenge it. You have to give them notice, and, it's due process.
I think a good starting point, as Martin said, would be we do have a list of important historic structures in our master plan. We've identified them. They're from the inventory.
But my
that was
question
done.
is,
And that would be a good-
why not designate them as historic
Right, and
structures as opposed to this
You have to
light?
do a full report, and then you're preventing any external modifications.
But
That's what
perhaps,
I'm-
Full report
perhaps
on
we don't
each of the
have,
On each of the
structures.
structures.
but perhaps we don't if we're doing it as a preservation light ordinance.
Well-
And that's something we should, maybe we should have our subcommittee look into. Maybe we can use that as the basis for this light ordinance. Because I think
You still have the
have
due process,
you have the
but you
due-
wouldn't have as much restriction.
and you have the rationale, because these are identified already as important historic structures.
Again, I think what we need here is a vote to kick it to subcommittee to come up with an ordinance that provides, that provides protection, and the details to be determined, that's.
I don't have a problem with exploring it.
Right, and looking for models. I suspect that there's some ordinances that are well-written and will help to guide
There have to be.
rationality.
There is such an ordinance still in Jersey City. There's an ordinance in Jersey City. The question is does that hold up?
What's it based on? Is it the same?
Is it it's still
Same
based?
basis.
If somebody, potentially if someone appealed that, on the time of application law, that might
It
come
could
up.
still be on the books because no one's taken it off the books.
Right. We didn't need to take our law off the books in the same way we didn't take our affordable housing law off the books when the court ruled that 20%
Court never ruled
affordable
that.
housing was not. So, we've kept laws on the books because.
A little different situation.
Well, it's the same.
We had more grounds we had counter arguments to keep it on the books.
Let
But
me-
in any case,
Well, I
Let me
think
make
it's
a-
worth looking at, is what I'm saying.
Yes.
I think
Yeah.
we can
Yeah.
come up with
I don't
something.
so why don't we
that makes
kick it
sense
to
and
committee?
practical.
We've got the
As Martin
zoning
says.
subcommittee, which is Carol, Carmel, and Tony. Unless, unless,
Sounds good,
unless
Carol.
there's
That's a great
somebody else who
suggestion.
It sounded
really,
better.
unless there's somebody else who really wants to work on this issue. And then Martin, if you want to,
I do want to work on it. Is Carol, are you trying to beg off this
Oh, no,
one?
well, I'm just.
Is it something the HPC can take on?
I think we should work with the HPC.
Exactly.
But
Okay.
independently.
Okay.
But independently. I think,
They,
Okay.
I mean,
I'm off that if you want to, that's not a
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
So who
we
wants
could
to-
have an
Okay.
ad hoc, we can have an ad hoc subcommittee.
if you want to. I mean, we have a zoning committee already, but we can have an ad hoc.
Well,
But
I
it's
don't
in-
want to,
Tony's temporarily dropped off this.
So then
No, I mean,
that would be,
I'm
let's-
not begging to go, I would just have.
so Carol, Carmel, and Martin.
Just have a little fun.
as an ad.
okay.
Okay, you're back.
And they'll work with
It's done. You
Arthur.
can't escape now.
I'll be glad to help.
Great.
Okay. So let Carmel know that she's been drafted
Okay.
for this
All
part of her
right.
committee responsibility. All right.
And just as an FYI, I believe they're meeting on this, I got an email that they're going to meet on this next week.
Is that HPC? Is
HPC,
they?
yes, the HPC. So, I think, hopefully we can have a collaborative, but still separate.
I think we should get together, and then once we have certain things, then have the collaboration with them as to.
So work independently at first.
Right,
and
right,
then
right, right.
collaborate.
Do the
Exactly.
research Carol suggests, I think.
Exactly.
Right, I
Yeah.
think that's what's needed. We
Yeah.
need to look at
I agree, and if HPC's already strapped to the point where you said, Martin, that they haven't picked this up, sounds like we should just handle it now.
Okay.
Does HBC have its own council?
Yes, Mr. Karasik.
Well, right now it's
Does
Mr.
he
Angelo.
Oh, it's Mr. Angelo,
Mr.
okay.
Angelo, Township Assistant Township.
Assistant.
Why? Yep, I won't guess any further.
Okay. Any other comments?
Mm.
I need a motion
Bills.
to pay bills.
With the one suggestion changing one of Tom's invoices to
Yeah.
be applied to the applicant, because it was a applicant DRC meeting, instead of going to the general escrow.
Right,
I
right.
would move to approve the bills as amended.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay.
All right. Thank you,
So
everyone.
I'll see you all next Monday. And hopefully I'll have a screen by then.
What do we have next on that one?
If for
I'm
no
not
other
going, I won't
reason,
see you.
you can
No, I
get
won't.
some masking tape and tape it to the blinds.
They should be able to bring a screen for next.